Welcome to the Painting of the Week podcast, where we look at some of the most significant paintings throughout history. Introducing your hosts, Phil Grabsky and Laura Bentham.
Welcome to this week's Painting of the Week. And we have one of our slightly unusual Painting of the Weeks in that I'm not with Laura this week, but I'm out and about. And I'm actually in Friday Harbour on San Juan Island, which is on the west coast of the United States in Washington State. I'm at the San Juan Museum of Art with Wendy Smith, who's the Assistant Curator here. And Wendy has chosen to talk about a beautiful tapestry, the name of which is Genesis #9/18 by the artist Alan Magee. The tapestry itself was done in 2005, and I would assume based on a painting done earlier, but we'll talk about that. So, let me start actually, Wendy, by asking a little bit about the museum itself. So when was the museum built, and what's its purpose? I'm sure it's very important to the community, but what's its purpose?
Well, thank you for having me. The San Juan Islands Museum of Art was actually first created in 2005. So we are actually coming up on our 20th anniversary next year. We've been in this building for almost 10 years. Before that, we were in rented spaces around town, doing the best we could, but also still producing wonderful exhibits at that time. We are a regional museum catering to the people of the San Juan Islands, but also further than that, in that we have artists not only from the islands and the region, but also from Canada, other parts of the United States, as well as Europe and even Africa. So we run the gamut of a little bit of everything, and we like mixing that up so that not only the local people of the islands, but also the visitors that come here often find something they don't expect to see.
Now, maybe it's the nature of a film festival, which is why I'm here for the Friday Harbour Film Festival, which has been fantastic. But I've bumped into, in 3 days, so many artists who work in all sorts of media. Is that just the nature of a film festival, or would you say that's actually something that feels representative of Friday Harbour, that there are people sculpting wood and working with stones as well as paints and,
Absolutely. It's not a fluke that you met so many artists. I often say you can't throw a stick without hitting an artist around here. It's a very artist-rich community on the islands, and that's one of the reasons I love living here, because there are so many artists, and also that they are not just portraying the local scenes. Oftentimes in more tourist type towns, you see gallery after gallery of paintings of the beach. Here, it's it's a huge variety of what they create. And I think it's because artists come here from so many different places, and they choose to live here because of the nature, the beauty, the remoteness of the island, but also that we do have this rich community of artists.
Also, can I just ask, so we're on San Juan Island, but the museum is called San Juan Islands.
Yes.
So just a little bit of kind of geographical background. I mean, people can look it up on a map, but I know that we are kind of on the Canadian-US border. There's obviously a number of islands. I mean, is this the biggest of the islands? Is that why the museum's here?
It's not geographically the largest island, but we have the largest population. And as you can see from our town, we're the big town in the islands. Friday Harbour is. San Juan Islands is a county, And so that's why the museum is called San Juan Islands Museum of Art, because we do represent all the islands. I'm not great on the history part of it, although it's fairly rich with different people claiming ownership of the islands, including the English. There was a big war called the Pig War about that. So, yeah.
We did see, we were doing a bit of reading. This is possibly the only place in the United States that raises the Union flag, the British flag, on a regular basis, just because of that historical discussion about whether this would be part of the United States or, I guess at the time that was British, or Canada.
Right.
And anyway, let's move on to the painting.
Yes.
Or the art, the tapestry, really.
Yes.
So, just to remind people listening to the podcast, if you go to the seventh-art.com website and press on the podcast button, then you'll see the artwork, or the YouTube channel. You can also do the same. Now, funnily enough, I came to an event here a couple of nights ago that was put on by the museum for the film festival, and I took only one photograph of an artwork, and it was this one, which Wendy didn't know before she chose it. So I think that's quite funny. I think it's really, really very attractive and interesting. But tell me why. Actually, first of all, let me ask, tell me about the artist.
Well, Alan Magee is a well-established artist from Maine on the east coast of the United States. He started doing illustration work when he just got out of art school in, I think, about 1968 or so. He would go to New York every day looking for work as an illustrator and had great luck finding multiple jobs and was busy as an illustrator for 15 years doing that.
A bit like Edward Hopper.
Yes, yeah. So that lends itself to why so many of his works are very realistic, with such incredible detail. After doing the illustration work for about 15 years, he was sort of getting a little stressed out and needed to find another way of expressing his art that was more calming. He and his wife traveled to Maine, and I believe it's Pemaquid Beach. I know it's Pemaquid Beach, yes, in Maine, where there are all these natural rock formations that have been weathered and worn down by the water there. He just knew instantly that that's what he wanted to paint, and that was his next step in his evolution. So he started doing that. But again, they were very realistic, with great detail, absolutely beautiful, and many of them on a massive scale. He also then started doing works like this one that we're looking at called Genesis, of a very simple paint box, a watercolor set that is well used and worn, something that many people could relate to. He likes the idea of painting tools, painting not only tools of a painter, but the tools that his father used in his service station that he had fixing cars. So he always paints all these wonderful tools. So that's a little bit about him, other than in, I think it was about 2001, he had a show in LA, and a couple of friends of his approached him about turning some of his artwork into these jacquard tapestries that we're seeing here in the gallery today.
So jacquard, what's that?
Jacquard, it's a type of weaving, a type of tapestry. These friends of his, I've got the names here, Don Farnsworth and John Nava. John Nava being an artist, and Don Farnsworth being very capable computer-wise. This is like 2001, but they had already been working with a tapestry weaving company in Belgium. And they were sending digital information about artworks to this place in Belgium and creating tapestries. So they approached Alan Magee and asked if he would like to participate in this. And he was very excited about it because Alan is not only a painter, an illustrator, he's a multimedia artist, he's a sculptor. He loves to show his work in all different mediums. So he was excited about the project and absolutely blown away by the results.
So is it as simple as he sent them a digital photograph of this and the other artworks in the exhibition?
From what I understand, yes, you're sending a digital image directly to this loom in Belgium. Yes, but there's also other information that is being sent. I'm sure it has to do with precise colors and that kind of thing. He has expressed that it's not as easy as it sounds.
I mean, I'm sure many of you listening will know something about the history of tapestries in art, and there are many, many examples. Raphael and others who create their artworks, and they often were indeed sent off to Belgium, where they would then be turned into the most beautiful tapestries that would end up on in some cases, the walls of the Vatican and similar kind of institutions, or indeed the walls of those that could afford them, partly for decoration and partly for warmth. And they're often extremely beautiful, but sometimes they are almost magical to look at because it's hard to imagine. Even this one that we're looking at now, if you look in detail, just at the background, it's so kind of complex. And whether that's part of the painting or whether that's somehow something that they've introduced into the loom stage, I mean, I don't know. But I mean, it's fabulously rich and detailed, isn't it?
It is, yes. And I'm not certain, but I do believe the background that you're seeing is somewhat from the painting, but definitely those textures that you're seeing are coming through from the weaving process that you wouldn't see in the painting itself. Even these sort of raised areas, you're not going to see that in a painting, but the weaving process allows these different passages to come through.
So there's a kind of three-dimensionality to it, which I assume isn't quite as pronounced in the painting.
Right.
Have you any idea whether he retired the painting, if you like? I mean, the exhibition that you have is entirely tapestries, I believe.
Yes.
Of his works. Do you think that there is a kind of parallel exhibition that he still offers, which is just the paintings?
I believe so. Yes.
Okay.
I can't be certain on that, but I am pretty sure. I mean, I know he is still exhibiting his work. Yes, definitely. More so on the East Coast.
I mean, is there a reason why, for example, the museum here has chosen to exhibit the tapestries rather than the paintings?
Sort of a logistical reason. We approached, actually, Sherry Bell on our exhibition committee approached Alan Magee after seeing his documentary, Art is Not a Solace, which was featured in the Friday Harbour Film Festival 2 years ago.
Okay.
So
his circularity.
Yes,
okay.
yes. So she reached out to him, and he was delighted. He loved the idea, but decided or recommended that he send the tapestries rather than the paintings from Maine. It was just going to make more sense for what we were all looking to do at that time. And so that's why we chose the tapestries, and we're really happy we did. And the response to them has been wonderful.
Just going back to the museum, is it a museum which is a mix of permanent collection and then temporary exhibitions? Or is it somewhere where you just do temporary exhibitions?
At this point, it's temporary exhibitions, and we do 4 different shows a year.
Okay.
Although even though we do 4 shows a year, within that period of exhibitions, it could be 3 artists that we're showing, or perhaps we use all 3 galleries for one artist or one artist family, as we just recently did for the Tsutakawa family.
Okay. Now, Alan Magee, did he come out for the opening of the show?
He did not. He lives in quite apparently a remote part of Maine, and the logistics of it all were just a bit too much, unfortunately. That's why we did a Zoom interview with him right before the opening, so that we could at least have him on camera. We offer these artist interviews with every show that we do, so it's a wonderful way to add layers to our visitors' experience.
Now, I was wondering to myself, of the tapestries that are here, and I think they're all great. And the people listening can't see them all, but for example, there's one behind you, which is a larger paintbrush and a small paintbrush. And there's another one around the corner, which is kind of pebbles from a beach, which resonates with me from being from Brighton, where our beach is pebbles. And I was thinking, well, what drew me to this one? Well, of course, part of it is just the visceral pleasure of the color. And, I'm here with a film about Van Gogh, where part of the initial appeal of a Van Gogh painting is that visceral pleasure that you take from color, and the way that he's thinking very carefully about how he positions colors against one another to create energy and narrative sometimes. But let me ask you, Wendy, what of the various tapestries that are here, what is it that draws you to this one? Why did you choose this one?
Well, immediately I'm drawn to the color. I love the vibrant color of it. And I also love that it's a used object, which is a subject that I greatly admire when an artist portrays that. I like that he wanted to use this universal symbol, really, of art that so many people could relate to. And the title, Genesis, when I saw the title, I was like, I get it. I get it. It's like, here is this simple paint box that so many people know what it is immediately around the world, whether you're a child or an amateur painter or a professional painter, a hobbyist, but also that it folds open. I think is amazing, and it folds open into this wealth of possibilities. And so to me, that's where I understood Genesis. It's like, this is the beginning. And there are so many stories that can be told through this simple palette of colors.
Actually, I'd not really noticed the hinges. I'm glad you pointed those out.
Yeah.
It's funny, it's where I sometimes part company with contemporary artists who will say, if I ask them to explain their artwork, they say, well, we don't, I'm not going to explain it. It means what it means to you. And sometimes I think that can be legitimate, and sometimes it's a bit lazy. I actually like a clue. And actually, I'm glad you mentioned the title, because, you could understand the artwork without necessarily seeing the title. But I, like you, when I saw Genesis, it's like, okay, I get it. It all starts from the materials. But then what I also liked about this, I think partly why I chose this one over some of the others, is that there's quite a lot to look at, and you can keep seeing new things.
Yes. Like
there's certain paints that have obviously, in this particular paint box, have been used more than others. It's a used artifact, but there's an awful lot to look at. And then you start thinking about, okay, he's used a lot of the blues and the whites and maybe a little less of some of the reds. And so it kind of, you can stand in front of this artwork. Then you start looking at just the craft. when you realize it's a tapestry, and it's obviously very closely woven tapestry. So I mean, it works on many levels.
It does. And I think one of the things that I was really looking at actually this morning is that top section, just above where you see the small palettes of paint. It almost looks like something you would see in another painting.
Yeah.
For some reason, I thought the Sistine Chapel, and I
Yeah.
don't know
No,
that
I get it.
that's
I get it. Yeah.
specifically it, but I thought, oh my gosh, I hadn't really noticed how
Yeah.
that's a painting in itself,
Yeah.
and reminiscent of many beautiful works I've seen, whether it's of sky or that atmosphere around so many wonderful paintings.
I mean, it's almost certainly coincidence, but these kind of ripples do occur. So, when you look at a Vermeer painting, in the background, there'll be a painting on the wall,
right?
Which is people will have tracked down what that painting actually is, and it's there for a reason, and it's part of the story. But again, it's just something. It's another layer to the painting, isn't it?
That's right. Yeah.
One of the hurdles that I've faced in my career with broadcasters is this sense of, people aren't interested in art, so we're not going to put it on television. And how have you found in your time here the engagement with the community? Do you find that it is, by and large, it is other artists that are coming, or is it much broader than that, and you're getting all sorts of demographics, all sorts of ages? I mean, this painting must surely appeal to anybody from 4 years old to 94 years old. But how are you finding the integration of the museum with the community?
That's a good question. We get many visitors from not only around the United States, but from around the world, particularly in the summer months. We're a little bit of a tourist destination. So we do have our local community. We have school groups that come in with our docent team that walk them through the art and talk about what appeals to you. Sometimes we have kids classes that come in and sketch, or they write a poem about a piece. One of the things that I love so much is the large demographic. I mean, the varied demographic that does walk through the doors here. And people that I may not have at first glance thought would be that interested end up spending, say, an hour and come out and just go, wow. And that's what excites me. I'm even getting goosebumps as I say that, because for me, it's about inspiring people, whether it's just, something that they haven't seen before, or I hope it might inspire them to create something. And I think oftentimes that's what I feel happens when people come through our doors and find exhibitions that you would not expect on a remote island in the Pacific Northwest of the United States.
We just made a film called My National Gallery about the National Gallery in London, partly because it's their 200th anniversary, although we'd started the film before we really associated it with the anniversary. And essentially it was staff members talking about their favorite artwork, all levels of staff. We threw in a few celebrities just for a bit of stardust, but there's a number of things that came through. And one of the things that became really clear is you need somebody at some point to take you to your first art gallery, whether it's a parent, a teacher, a grandparent. And then once you've come into the gallery, one would hope, and certainly in the case, all the cases in that particular film, people are hooked. And I'm absolutely sure that, that's, for me, there was we lived in a small town in northern England, and walking from where we lived into the centre of town, there was a little, wasn't even a gallery, it was just part of a park, little kind of 2-room building that had glass cases full of bits of dinosaur bone and Roman pottery, and it just sparked my imagination. So I hope that I'm sure that people living here or visitors here that haven't been to a gallery before, I'm sure if they came in, they would be thoroughly engaged. I hope that the podcast will add a little bit if somebody comes here on holiday, which they should, because it's a beautiful, beautiful part of the world. If you don't have a sign in the port, in the harbour, saying Museum of Art, half a mile this way, you should.
Yes.
And I look forward to coming back and visiting the exhibition again, or the next exhibitions. Final question, I assume you have a website that people could look up a little bit more?
Yes, it is simply S as in Sam, JIMA.org.
Thank you very much for listening. I'm in Friday Harbour and San Juan Island, and if you get a chance, you should come one day too. I'm here with the Van Gogh Poets and Lovers. If you're listening to this podcast before the middle of January 2025, the exhibition is still on at the National Gallery in London. If not, then please go to 7th-art.com to download the film, and 202 or 250 other films you can have a look at. And I'll be back soon with another Painting of the Week.
Thank you for listening to the Painting of the Week podcast. For more information, please visit our website at 7th-art.com or contact us by emailing info@7th-art.com. See you next time.